Welcome back to Story Deep Dive with Rachel and Dana. This is a podcast where two book coaches, editors, and besties discuss books not as readers but as writers to draw inspiration from great books and have plenty of laughs along the way. And this week we are coming back around to K.F. Breene's Sin and Chocolate, and we're going to be talking about the characters. But before we deep dive into K.F. Breene's characters in this book, you know I gotta check in with my bestie, Dana. Tell me what's new over at Danger Tales at the time of this recording.
Y'all, one day we're gonna stop being surprised by the questions that we know are coming.
Every time.
every time. Right. We're finishing up the, actually, I don't want to talk about that. Listen, y'all, plot twist. Sorry.
Not the twist.
It's not even the afternoon. Listen, this is a little bit of hot takes bringing you into my shenanigans. So I've been getting all of these emails and messages on social media asking when we're going to do another boot camp.
Man, I'm sure as gratifying as I'm sure that is.
Come on.
Given the amount of time and energy that daggone boot camp took you, I would imagine that you're like, man, can I take a nap first? Come on.
Listen, a hard pause and a Baptist finger. Listen, so if this is your first time listening, welcome. If you've been around, you know that, oh gosh, it was a few months. Oh my God, almost 4 or 5 months ago.
Was it that long ago? It was in the middle of the summer, right?
June.
Yeah, June. That was a couple months ago.
And by the time this is, yes.
It's even more than that. Yeah, perfect.
Time flies. Jeez. So we did a boot camp because I was completing my certification of to be a Hello 7 coach, and I did a 4-week boot camp, and it was 4 weeks of boot camping, and I just feel like
what do you feel like, Dana? Tell me. Do you want to cry? Do you want to lie down? Would you like some coffee? Because the fact that you're cutting down coffee right now, astounds me.
I feel like it's something that I want to do, but I don't think I will ever do it again like that. Mm-hmm. Because I kind of did votes in both Inner Circle and DTW, and they all want to do it again as well. And so, yeah, I just think it's interesting. I think it may be sort of more contained, maybe a week, kind of like where people are doing challenges versus it being a boot camp that's spread out for so long. But I do think that it would be very interesting to be able to create something that we could do like a couple times a year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Something that's reasonably repeatable. Not 4 weeks and 100,000 million hours and, you know.
Listen. People did some great experience, but now that I have the Addictive Romance Blueprint, like I've already, listen, you know, when I prepare, I have everything. So I have my slide deck, my workbooks, I have everything, but it's the fact of like doing it again. It's like if you ever trained for a race, once you run that race, you are good for a good length of time. You don't want to think about another race for a long time. So that's kind of how I feel. I think it's interesting. So with that said, you know, who knows? I'm liable to do anything at any given time.
That's true.
I could decide tomorrow I change my mind and it's like, I'm a goer. And so, we shall see how that sort of turns out. But for now, we are just in the throes of our collaborations publishing. Mm-hmm. We are in the second of 4 collaborations that are active right now. Yes, baby, we are rolling. I think the 3rd book and the 2nd collaboration is coming up. So that would make either book 6 or 7 for this year. And then we go all the way through the end of November. And then in November, the Christmas collaborations pick up. So So it'll be 5 this year. Which books, listen, they're all doing well.
Good.
And it's just been, listen, I just show up and sit in this chair and figure out what I'm going to do.
Honestly, that's the trick to writing. Like,
it is.
You show up and do the daggone thing, right? But you have, and you gotta keep, and you gotta keep, and you gotta keep, and you gotta keep, right? And it's just like, there's only one way it gets done, and it's like this.
It's like, you gotta do the work. Yes, that's what we're doing. We're showing up. We're doing the work. I have so many people that are in the inner circle. It's like, okay, I'm working hard to be a plotter because it's so much easier to write. I was like, I've been telling you, but you know what? You don't have to be a part of the bootcamp experience. But yeah, so we'll see. That's all that I'm, other than that, we're finishing the live recordings at this time of the Addictive Romance Blueprint. We'll have students in that. And this coming up week at the time of our recording, we're about to have our second act book club discussion.
That's right, because you're going real deep into the one act per book club. Ooh,
yes,
that's so exciting.
Act 1 went great. So now we're about to do Act 2, which is going to be great. And so, yeah, so we're rolling. So with that said, that's all of y'all. This was half baked in the middle doing the daggone thing in progress update. Okay. So with that said, what do you have going on over there at Story Cypher, Rachel?
So at the time of this no, not at the time, but when this comes out, I have one of my clients who is almost done with her most recent draft. So this is the first draft of the new version of the story. So it's not her first draft because she's written, when she came to me, she had already written multiple drafts of the story. But then we had to kind of I read through it and then said okay, what is it that you're trying to do? We created the outline, and then she's been writing, from that outline since. And we're going to and it's been her first, so it's the first draft of the new version, and it is done, which is that is a huge moment for celebration, right? A draft getting done, let's just take a hot second and cheer for that, because that rules so hard. Because now, especially because this is we mapped out what is this story, and she wasn't quite writing to a super detailed outline. She needed to kind of rediscover the story and then write into it. Now we get into the this is where we're going to get, so what I've got kind of in store for her is we are going to read the whole manuscript together. We're going to say, all right, now that you know what this story is, and now that we've seen the whole thing, where are we tightening? How are we going to basically create a more detailed outline that is all a little bit tighter? Because there were, she got really clear on her protagonist's arcs, right? Because it's a romance, so it's got dual POV. And she got in the writing, she got really clear on their arcs and who they are to each other. And I'm watching it, as she's writing the draft, I'm watching this develop of it's so it just makes your heart warm and break and all the good things. And so now we get to go, so we're going to read the whole thing, and then we got to say, okay, how do we set this up in the beginning? We're going to get those lovers, we're going to get them on the page, we're going to get them a little sooner. And that's that's normal, right? Of I think this is the connection point. And then she discovered some other connection point that can set her up for success way sooner, way earlier in the story. And it's oh, great, we can revise this, so we're going to, be able to re-outline and say, okay, what are the scenes we need to have? And she can begin to almost this isn't the right turn of phrase, but it's the one that I have in my head of write to spec, where it's here is the sheet of what I need to do. And now she can write more directly to that, now that she has a full understanding of the story, and begin to craft it into what she knows now that it needs to be. And that's the ooh, this is the really fun part. And she, suffered writing the first act when it was oh, I'm just getting words on the page to get into the story and make it happen. And so I'm really excited to get into that part, because it's one step closer to publication. I'm thinking she probably will write this draft, and then we'll do some maybe some revisions just throughout, and then it should be ready to go out for publication. She'll be self-publishing, and I'm so So excited. So this is one of those milestones that you hit with your clients that are just like, yay! Like, you're just getting so pumped. I get so excited for my clients when they finish, when they finish that draft. And even though it's not the final draft, it's a huge moment of success and a huge amount of work that's gone into it. And now we get into the real nitty gritty of the drafting. And that is the part that's just, I think it's the most fun. It's sort of the most satisfying part. So really excited to be digging into that over the next couple months. And it's just always nice to have those wins and to hit those checkpoints, because writing is a long process, so it takes a while to get there.
I'm always amazed by the difference in our clients.
I know. It's like, write for a year, release the book. And this is like, this is what we're aiming for. And you're like, my clients, have to have had 4 books out already, kind of.
But how is she feeling after, like, the road and the journey that she's been on to get to this point, and now that it's finally getting clear? Because I would assume what normally happens is that it's getting, as she's writing, all the things that you've told her over the days, months, in the time that you've worked together is now beginning to really crystallize, right? Because she's doing the work and she's showing up and she's finding out where those places are that you've mentioned before, which allow, and even the places where the story begins to speak to you and you can begin to respond to it and make the adjustments to sort of just refine it. How is she feeling?
It's been so wonderful because I am watching her enjoy writing so much. Like, she does it because she enjoys it. So it's not like she's like, she hated it at first and now she actually enjoys it. But like, when we show up to talk, like, she is like so excited to like talk about what she just wrote. And when we get off our calls, one of the goals on my calls is always for my clients to be excited to get back to work. We've cleared the blocks. We've talked about their work. We've talked about what they've learned and where it's going. And that, like, all of that is energizing them to springboard back into it. Because sometimes you need to have some conversation. You need to clear some blocks. And daggone it, you need someone in your corner just being like, this story is awesome. This is a good idea. Keep going, right? And so that by the end of that, they're like, raring to go. But what's so awesome is, like, she shows up to our meetings, and she's raring to go when she gets there because she's so excited about the work that she's done. And like, the writing sometimes almost is like, she's just almost like she's taking dictation. She's having more of those moments when it's just flowing. And it's like she's, cracking the story open and the emotional resonances are starting to really come through. And she's really, really seeing it like for herself and coming out on the page. And so I'm watching there's that satisfaction and that like increase of enjoyment because it's really, really moving now. And it's been so, oh man, I live for it. Our meetings make me so dang happy. We have so much fun talking and geeking out about the story. And then whenever whenever I get new chapters for the week, I'm just like, let me at him. Let me see him. Like, what did we do this week? So, she's been feeling really good. And so, she's been having, unless I'm completely misreading the situation, she's having a great time.
Listen, if your face is any indication of it, she is. I'm so excited. Okay. I look forward to updates too, because I know we've talked about it like on and off over the time, but just how it comes together, sort of how she lands the plane, and of course, as always, if there's anything I can do, because I'm excited. I'm excited for both of you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's get into. We were about to gush a little bit together, and I'm like, all right, back on track, Rachel. Let's go. Okay. So we were talking about characters for Sin and Chocolate. Dana, before we dive into all of the goodness of our cast, can you hit us with a summary, if you please?
Yes, I will. K.F. Breene's Sin and Chocolate is the first book in the Demigods of San Francisco series, an urban fantasy romance that blends gritty survival, found family, and a broody demigod love interest. The story follows Alexis, a woman scraping by in San Francisco's neutral magical zone while protecting her 2 wards, Daisy and Mordecai. Her life changes when she crosses paths with Kieran, the sinfully powerful son of a ruthless demigod ruler. and Lexi has a rare power he's been looking for to save his mother. The book delivers slow burn romance, high stakes magic, sharp humor, and deep emotional bonds, all while setting up a series long couple whose relationship unfolds across 6 books. So that's what we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so can you talk to me a little bit at like the high level of like what are the points you really want to hit when we're talking about characters today?
For this one, I think I told Rachel when my husband and I were walking this morning that this was just a solid book, right? And that could sound like bleh. It's not bleh. It's not neutral. It's not right. It's a solid book. And so I think when you're talking about the characters, it's almost very simple. Mm-hmm. It's like we talk about Alexis, talk about Kieran, talk about her wards, and even though we say them Daisy and Mordecai, I think some of the things that we brought up in our plot session, which is how her wards affect the overall plot. So just talking a little bit about that and sort of bring everything in. And I also have just a couple of like side points that I kind of think will naturally fold in. One being Valens, who is who is the antagonist, that we feel his presence more off the page than on the page. But I think it's important, especially because this is a book 1 of a 6-book series. And then finally, which talks about the series in that this is a couple that is being built. And so this book does not end with a happily ever after. This is a book that ends with a happy for now. But what I absolutely love, and I didn't say this in the plot, but I'll say it now. This is what I personally would consider like a soft cliffhanger. And one of those things whenever I'm talking to clients and they're talking about doing things, whether it's a duet or a duo or a trilogy, and the first thing that people usually say is, I don't like cliffhangers, right? And that they stay away from it. But in this genre, having trilogies or having duets or having sagas or whatever you would call this series is common. So you really have to decide, how do you want to handle those ends? Do you want to have a hard, true cliffhanger like the end of a television series? Or do you want to have something where it's a soft cliffhanger where, we sort of wrap up what's going on here, but we know that something else bigger, which is why Valens' presence across the book is so important, hanging out in the distance. And that's what we can also sort of weave into this conversation about the characters in Sin and Chocolate.
Yeah. And I do think, I like that you can sort of identify, that you can give specific language to that of like soft cliffhanger so that people can understand, first off, recognize that there is a difference, but then also that like, okay, if you're not crazy about like the hard cliffhanger, there are ways to do it that are still signaling that we have more books and creating like tension or interest without it being like, in the middle of something and just and then cutting it off. And but also, being honest with people of like, cliffhangers are a part of how we do again, trilogies or duets or series in romance. This is just a part of it when you're working with multiple books like that. And
with the same couple.
Yeah, with the same couple. And versus, things we never got over. It resolves. Next book, it resolves, et cetera, et cetera. But just, sometimes you have like, it's that like, I'm going to give you some bad news. It just is what it is. And like, you're going to have to just either do different couples in each book so you don't have to do that, or get a little bit more comfortable with some version of cliffhanger and it is okay, So being able to both identify that and give language to it, I think is just really helpful. And our notes are really, overlapping because the thing is this is a super small cast. Like, we know exactly who we are focused on for this book. It doesn't really expand out that far. And so it gets us invested in our little core cast really well because like they all kind of are just very tightly weaved through the plot. So I'm wondering, because we're going to talk about Lexi, we're going to talk about Daisy and Mordecai as well as Kieran. Can we start by talking about Kieran a little bit? Can you talk to me about Kieran as, a main male character and sort of what he brings to the table, how we sort of see his like personality coming out. Like, I just want you to talk to me about what is, as a romance main male character, as a male lead in a romance, talk to me about what Kieran is doing in this story.
First of all, that is not a simple question, y'all. It's
Love it. It's just trying to leave it open. Just like explain everything.
Girl, where is that in my notes? I was like, okay. Okay. First of all, there's no way that I can say all of that, but what I will say is I think one of the things that I absolutely love about Kieran, I'll say a couple, but what I absolutely love about Kieran is the fact that this is a solid alpha main male character. This is a character that in any other circumstances would probably be almost like whether it's like the boss hole or the alpha hole or whatever, because of, you know, the fact that he has power, not just in his stance in the society, but in his being because of this type of story. Also the fact that he has privilege, he has access, and in all areas, for the most part, he can have anything he wants at any time he wants, except this. And so the thing that is his except this becomes the thing that immediately sort of attaches us to him. Because the reality is he's a man that's in grief. And so to have him being in his fullness, you know, and when he meets Lexi, he's going into this secret meeting because he has this master plan that if this plan does not work, but he's willing to take a risk, right? Because it means that much to him. And so for him to cross paths with her and to be immediately connected to her, and for his connection to her to bring out things in him that reminds him of something that he caused that is so precious to him, his mother, that it just makes all of this big, you know, handsome, rich, billionaire, got everything guy just seem normal.
Yeah.
Like I'm just dealing with some ish.
Those edges.
Listen, it just it chips them away. Like he's just dealing with some ish. Life is lifing for him too, and that he is not immune. And the fact that Lexi comes along and he just does not get his way because he wants it, because she doesn't know who he is again, right? And I think it's like on one hand it could be like, okay, you're getting a slice of humble pie, but she doesn't even know who he is. So I think what it does, and I said this in our last episode, I believe, which is it allows Kieran to be Kieran a little bit. And we see that this is him. The big, broody, powerful, strong, very observant, very aware, very caring. I think I said observant already. Like we see all of that, and we see that in him within the first few chapters. And so I think this is a play on the alpha of being not just an alpha in a role, because he's over his six who are his team. He is the son of a demigod, which means he has some capacity and ruling, if you will, when it comes to the structure of how the world is set up in San Francisco or in these books. But also in how he shows up when something needs to be done, it gets done. You know, if she needs to be protected, she's going to be protected. Now she's pushing up against it, and those are some of the things that you kind of had some issue with. So I think the last part that I'm going to say about this is I think this is also a very interesting play on point of view. Some of the things that we brought up when we read Beautifully Cruel, which is, you know, how much exposure do we get to him? And we see another opportunity or another example of limiting our access to him means we're also being limited to some of those details that we are not ready to reveal yet.
Yeah.
We have 6 books, we have 5 more books, right? And so we know enough to understand that things are imminent and that there are life or death stakes.
Yeah.
And that he is in like over his eyeballs.
Yeah.
But he's playing it cool, right? Because we never let him see you sweat.
Yeah.
But we see that, but we have this opportunity to sort of see them almost in a bubble, if you will. not at all exposed to his world fully. And we see the extent of his power, not the full, but how, whether it's people, objects, beings doing what he says, but also starting to be a sort of protected, if you will, of Lexi and her wards. And I think the final thing too, which is like a little bitty thing, but it's a big thing because technically this is a billionaire romance, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you see what money and access gives you, right? Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people think of billionaire romance as being just the fact that he's a billionaire and she's not, right? But here it's really like, I always tell my clients, like, don't just think about a billionaire as being a billionaire romance. Think about, what does being a billionaire mean here?
Yeah.
And what does it bring to the female main character's life that she needs, even if she doesn't want it?
Yeah.
And which we'll talk about, I'm sure when we get to the wards, is like, whether she wants him because he's a billionaire or not does not negate the fact that she needs him.
Yeah.
And that just makes their connection that much closer. Also, it makes the resistance more, because she's just like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
But on one hand, like, you kind of gotta.
Yeah.
And so Kieran is all of that. I feel like his broodiness and his, if you want to call it, like, it could be a little bit considered like a grumpy sunshine, even though she's not fully sunshine, but she's as about as optimistic as you're going to be, given her circumstances. But I think it has a lot to do with grief, the circumstances that he's under. And the reality is that he's having to face some really hard truths about his reality. And we don't get the fullness of that, but we get enough of it to ache for him.
Yeah.
And when we have that moment with a man or a male character in your story, that it sort of almost makes all those things that I just said, they're there, but they don't, how do I say it? The things that he has access to and the difference in their power dynamic and their status could make those all be things that turn people off from him.
Yeah.
But because he is hurting like any other son, he wants closure like any other son would want for his mother. And he is aching, and he cannot show that at all. And the fact that she can access that, all of those other things, they don't matter. And I think that makes for a very interesting position to go into, so that when he flexes that, we get it, and it's like, okay, like, I'm paying attention. But it doesn't turn into a turn off, and it doesn't turn into a jerk, and it doesn't cause that edge to go too far. And so I hope that answers a little bit. But I think overall, I just feel like on one hand, he sort of is untouchable, but the reality is he's touched in the way that no one can heal except for time and closure. And he can't affect the time because time's got to pass, but he can work on closure. And that's what he's working on in the story.
Yeah. And it means that he needs Lexi. Right?
Exactly.
Like, he needs Lexi for that closure. And what I like about that too is, even though, Lexi in particular has no interest in finding out what they have in common, they both are going to whatever length for the people they love, right?
Exactly.
So he, his those edges on Kieran are softened because he has someone he cares about. And I think that's one of the ways because actually what happens is Lexi's edges, because she can be a little kind of like a dog with a little dog syndrome, and they're they're kind of yappy, and they can be really aggressive, and they're sort of compensating for the fact that they're tiny.
Boogie, because I'm I always call him short man complex. He going out there with a short man complex.
That's right. They just sort of want to pick a fight with everybody and everything. Lexi has a little bit of that. She's a lot of that. But similarly, those edges are softened by giving Kieran and giving Lexi something that they care about more than anything else that isn't themselves, right? So they have something that Lexi is above all trying to protect her wards. She cares the most about caring for Mordecai and caring for Daisy and making sure they're protected and they have a shot at life. And Kieran has all of this stuff, and he comes from, all of this power, but like his mom and caring for his mom and protecting her and all of that, like that is other centered, right? And so it takes off that edge, but it gives them something in common as well, that we see that these are two people who are trying to do their best by the people that they love, and draws that commonality. And it's also that thing that brings them on the collision, because Lexi wouldn't be anywhere near Kieran were it not for her wards, and Kieran wouldn't know to come to Lexi, or that he needed Lexi, had they not crossed paths. But now, because she has what he needs, and so they're crossing paths on this same axis of people that they care about. And I think that parallel is really nice. And again, it's funny, and it only just now occurred to me that it's softening both of their edges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what happens is essentially both of them need something that they cannot give themselves, right? He has all the money, but he cannot get that closure on his own, or else he would. And she doesn't have the money or the access to be able to do what she needs to do for Mordecai.
Yeah.
And what I feel like, if we were really to pull back, I think this is a great sort of story to sort of pull back and sort of like look at, like, what are those commonalities? What are those things that you can sort of write down and say, okay, these are some of the dynamics that you would like to play with. And one of them is sort of that, one, when they pull up, like, it's something that's bigger than them, that it makes it worth them being in that life or death stakes for the other, which kind of cements them together more. But it also is a leveler of all of those things that make them opposites, and also that makes that power dynamic exist. It sort of levels all of that, and it's almost like it makes the surface flat, and it makes it almost like they're standing toe to toe in a way. So that when those differences reemerge, it's for something that's a lot more valuable, if you will. Like the fact that she doesn't know her power, and he knows power as well, right? And how to help and train and mold, and how he is learning to soften when it comes to, reminds me of like Knox and Waylay, right? When he's in a way looking out for her and Daisy and Mordecai, and you see that grow as well. And so I think we could say it kind of softens the edges, but those could be the things that we're looking for when we're building these kind of characters. Because the reality is, you want people invested for more than one book. If you know you're going to make this as a series, and it's not just about how you thread the story together, because at the end of the day, you want them invested enough that they're going to buy the other book, right? I always call this is pre-selling, okay? This is marketing before you even write the words. It's how you build them. And so, I agree. I think there is such it's almost like he has the pendulum swings so far for him that he has these very vulnerable moments, and they sort of close off behind behind a brick wall, so stone wall, right, to not let anyone through. And what's amazing, which the connection between them becomes what Michael Haig talks about, like the essence. Like the essence of each of them is what attracts them, even above and beyond all of this. Right? It's masked as curiosity, it's masked as physical attraction, but it's something else that's there, and that something else also pulls us in. So we have these things where, in the addictive framework, like I call this like our braid, right? We have our external, our internal, and the romantic braids, right? And people can say like you just have the romance, but that internal is about that individual character's own personal journey, right? And he's on this journey of closure, and there's something bigger out there for him too, but the closure isn't for him, even though it is, because it's also for him about letting go, and about trusting the process, trusting what he cannot see, trusting what his power won't even allow him to access, right? For a man that has everything, he doesn't have the thing that he needs. And for her, it's causing her to expand her world, right? To let someone else in, to let others and Kieran know the truth of this state. The fact that they're vegan because they cannot afford food, Listen, right? And that they are literally like living off of love and family, right?
Yeah.
And it's causing both of them to I always say that the best romances cause characters to want to be a better version of themselves to have that love.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing it in slow motion.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing it in slow motion.
Yeah,
because it's a slow burn.
It's like, it is a super slow burn because it's slow burn over a series.
Exactly. But we're seeing it. And that's how we get both of them, right? We get Lexi, who's sort of like this underdog, but we see that she's selfless, that she's willing to sacrifice even the little bit of access that she could have to be able to protect and shield. Protect Daisy, shield Mordecai, and then what she's willing to do and put herself in an additional financial hardship, as if she doesn't have enough to be able to care for them and to get the medication and the things that they need, and how she was so willing to step in when her mother, passed away. And so we see both of them coming together and sort of both having their own form of a mother wound. Being played out for us in this book one. So yeah,
and this is a great kind of opportunity to kind of like pivot over into talking about Lexi as well, as sort of our protagonist, because Lexi as a character has the benefit of a really strong singular goal driving her throughout the story, right? Which is really what allows us to see who she is. So rather than, and I don't want to rag on it too much, but right, like in Beautifully Cruel, right? True, she was going to law school, but she wasn't really in pursuit of anything specific. So like when Liam wasn't around, there really wasn't that much to happen, right? It's just sort of like reacting to stuff around. And what that meant is that we only had moments where we saw True being being kind of whatever she's meant to be as the protagonist. With Lexi, from the very get-go, we know what she cares about, and that's caring for Mordecai and Daisy. And when you have a character that has a, strong goal that drives them through the story and that motivates everything that they do, it allows you to really showcase who they are, because we see that, Lexi will do anything for her wards, and that she already has done anything. So it's not just like she's like, I would do anything for my kids. She's not just saying that and then we never see it happen. When we enter the story, we see that she is in the middle of having done everything she could for her wards. And so it really brings that her personality isn't just in theory, right? It's not like I'm shy and then we never see her being shy. We watch her do this scene after scene after scene, and it drives everything she does so that she really becomes robust as a character. We understand why she does what she does, and it makes sense to us because we've witnessed it, and of course we know that these, her wards are more important than anything else in this world to her. And so it gives us, again, that goal gives us the opportunity to showcase the protagonist's personality.
Yeah, and we also see that a part of her is not limited, right? It is who she is. So, like with Frank and some of the other people that she come across in the story, right? In their own, their stories and how she can potentially help them. It's not limited. And so that makes it so, again, listen, at the end of the day, when you have a book that's a multi-book series and it's with the same characters, you really are fighting for people to relate enough that they care enough to continue the story.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we're seeing here as well. Right? We're seeing that. And I know that you said there's some moments where she's just like, listen, a girl's got to hold out. Okay? We're just going to call it that. But it's just like a bit much. But I think sometimes what could happen is that could be masked in a different way of like exposing herself to certain situations could expose them. And that could have been a better way to pit it versus it being just like, I just don't wanna or whatever, But with that said, I think it is done better. And I think it also attributes to being really intentional about what you select as the external goal for that character, right? Because I think sometimes people get it a little bit twisted and they only select the goal as being something that's joint, right? Or to the story. But there's something usually that character wants, that she wants, that, you know, and in this case, it just so happens to be for Mordecai. But having that be very clear, and it has nothing to do with him. And it has nothing to do with the relationship. And I think with the other story, it was there, but I think the pacing of when she graduated and all that stuff sort of threw that off, and it kind of made it fall off. So it made it so like it was there, but it was a blimp. But here it was front and center, because for all, you know, for everything that happens in the story, had Mordecai not had that condition, they probably would have never crossed paths.
Yeah, we don't have a story, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely. Now, the other thing that I also have about the found family, because we've talked about Kieran, talked about Alexis, and the found family is another big aspect, and it's sort of like Alexis and Mordecai and Daisy. And just for the record, Mordecai and Daisy, without giving, like, we aim to not to do spoilers. Mordecai and Daisy, she calls them her wards. I kind of got tired of them calling her wards, but whatever, they're her kids. That her mother sort of took in kids that had nowhere to go. But Mordecai and Daisy are very unique cases who cannot go out into the world due to their personal circumstances. And she knows that. And because she knows that, she's essentially protecting and shielding them, even to the point where Mordecai, like, they homeschool or whatever to protect him. And there are some things in this magical society that she may have access to if she did not choose to take care of them. And so she chooses to put herself in that situation to take care of them. It also becomes like the thread of comical relief.
Yes,
because it's a democracy between them. They vote because these are teenagers, so they're not babies. So they have Daisy is a hoot. Mordecai is like the probably the parent of both of them.
Yeah. And
it makes for a very interesting dynamic between the three of them. But at the end of the day, Alexis would do anything for them. And listen, they would do anything for Alexis.
Yeah.
And go toe to toe with whoever, whether they have the power or not, they don't care. Yeah. It's like that blind, blind faith. And so, but what it does is, I think it begins the discussion or the theme of found family and the role that it plays in each of their lives and what they're willing to do to protect that. And so we see that with them. You see this theme grow and expand as their world expands. And you also see Kieran, it's almost like basking in the light of that. Like that he gets to see Lexi in that capacity, but he also gets to experience that capacity. And it makes for, again, like, it is a thread that cannot be removed, but I think it's one of those threads that help us to see a softer side of both of them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And it makes it so that at the end of the day, like, when the stakes rise, they're not going anywhere. They're gonna jump in. Yeah. And so, yeah, definitely. So I know you had some notes about Mordecai and Daisy as well, right?
Yeah. So, I think, so number one, again, they literally make the book because without them, Lexi has nothing to do and no reason to, come into contact with Kieran or anything like that. And it also helps offset some of those moments when she's a little too, almost like trying to lay it on a little too thick, that, like, she's a tough girl and she's, like, feisty, and it's sort of like sometimes she's just feisty because as a character she's been labeled feisty, and sometimes you're like, it's okay, you can sit down, like, you don't, so it's like one of those red flags to look out for if you're writing, like, a particularly a tough female character. I find that just sometimes the result is that you is sort of the pitfall of making them just like a yappy dog, and they're just always, like, picking fights because they're supposed to be tough, and it's not anchored in sensible plot related decisions and emerging out of their character in a more nuanced way than just because she's tough, it means she fights all the time, because that's not necessarily how that works. But they bring some of that offset whenever at times you're feeling a little like, can you tone it down? They really bring in kind of some of that balance. When I taught the outlining module, and I talked about coming up with characters, and I was talking for people who are kind of like me, who find characters sort of hard to do. Like, it's funny because for you, characters, they just live in there, and they just kind of like come out, and you're like, oh yeah, I need this person, and they're almost like in your mind, they're like obvious to you because they live there. That's like, they just kind of come out of the woodwork. I kind of have to like pull them kicking and screaming out of my brain. I'm like, get out here, get out, just like trying to wrestle them out. And so for anyone who's like me, who is sort of more like a much more event oriented and characters don't feel like they come as easily to me, I was talking about using contrasting characteristics to help you develop that additional cast. So you have your protagonist who's, moving throughout the world in a particular kind of story, and then you're looking for, okay, whether it's contrasting characteristics to your protagonist or what few characters you do know that you have in your story, and you're like, okay, like what is the opposing force to this, or what is the opposite of this? And you might start with polar opposites and then move in a little closer toward the middle so that they're not cliche or like tropey or anything like that. But then you begin to kind of triangulate this cast so that it becomes kind of well-rounded, and you get kind of this variety that makes it feel very robust and very alive. And Mordecai and Daisy are exactly that. So you have Lexi, and she's got a little bit of a chip on her shoulder. She's just trying. She's trying to like force her way through it. And you have Mordecai, who's very he's not so reactive. He's he is kind of like, and it's this nice inversion because he's kind of the adult in the room, even though he's one of the teenagers. And then you have Daisy, who she's a lot like Lexi, actually. Like, she has this very like kind of headstrong, but she has this enormous amount of like sass and sarcasm, and but then she has this funny meticulous side, right, where she is like this business acumen that doesn't belong in like a 14-year-old, right? And so it creates this sort of, it has these unexpected characteristics that sort of invert the relationships and gives it that, it's where the comedic relief comes from, and it's where that sort of lively feeling that makes us really like them comes from those contrasting characteristics. And so I think that, Mordecai and Daisy became essential. They are essential parts of the story, not just from a plot perspective, but because of what they bring individually to the story and to the group dynamic, so that they all kind of play off of one another, and it gives us that really lively dialogue that endears us to that narrow cast that we have, because she really focuses in and builds this, she builds this really strong relationship between Lexi and Mordecai and Daisy, and we see that, just following throughout the story, and we get all of that comedic relief and all of that fun banter. And it makes us like and care about all of them, so that we have this tight core of characters that we are now invested in, so that when we get, we again are invested for book 2 because we like them and we want to see what they're going to do. We want to see how they're going to, we want to see them win, and we want to see how they're going to do it. And so we show up for them again, and then she has this tight core that she can kind of build out from in the following books, but we have a small cast that we're connected to that we can then build around as we go, since we have so many books. But we also have sort of like a deterministic number of books. It's 6 books, and it has a definitive end, versus a serial style where we don't know how many books we're going to do. We just are going to do them until we run out of them, or until people stop buying them or whatever.
I like the thought of that. What I always look for is balance. And not balance in the way, I guess balance is balance. But if you're a person who you look at archetypes, or if you're someone who you don't do well with the standard archetypes that you find, I find that any sort of resource that you have, and if you strive for a sense of balance where no one character represents the same thing, unless you kind of have an overlap, it helps to make it so that you have this well-rounded approach to how the challenge or how the problem is seen. And here, it is interesting because we see it from the three of them. And then we also, every once in a while get Kieran's, and it does have this sense of balance or contrasting, but that it makes it so that we are invested as readers in their individual journeys as subplots, and also those threads that will carry over into the future books, but also in how they interpret and intercede and engage Lexi trying to figure this thing out. Because she's just trying to figure it out, right? She's never done this before, and they've never done this before, but they know how to call her out when she's not doing it right, or when she needs to do it better. Because I think Mordecai he's like you. He is young with an old soul, okay?
Yes, that must be why I like him so much, because Trevor and I are sort of just old people stuffed into young bodies, and I know an old soul when I see one.
When she was giving her the riot about what, trying to do with drugs, and he was like, and immoral, just throwing in my little 2 cents. And I think the last little element that I have, other than talking about them as a romantic arc, is the thing about Valance. And there's really not a lot to say about him, because we know about him from the beginning, from chapter 1. And I just love this. And it makes me think about, y'all, we're talking about characters and not plots, but just go with me for a second. Like how your most your significant plot is usually introduced early, and it's one of the last things to sort of wrap up, and it's him, right? And we see it early, even though we don't see him on the page, but we know enough to know when he does come to the page, stuff is going to start to change. And I think that's enough here. It's kind of the opposite of the issue that you sort of had with The Beautifully Cruel, because we understand what the stakes are. And this book is almost all focused on the beginnings of that romantic relationship, even though there is action and there is the sort of crosshairs of with the magic and Lexi understanding what the stakes are and them being sort of stuck together to bring us to the end of the act 1. But and so he really doesn't intersect, but in reality he does. It's almost having like an omnipresence. And so we know enough, and we see him through the lens of Kieran, but we also see him through the lens of Lexi, who is under his domain or kingdom or whatever. Whatever. He's the man and she's not, okay? And so and how we instinctively know something big is coming. We don't really know what fully. We know what Kieran's plans are, and we know how this could affect Lexi in general, because he's the man in control, and we know it, and we know enough to feel like to understand the capacity of the threat. And that's enough. That's enough. And he stays present enough that we never lose the tension of his presence, even though he's not there. And I think that was beautifully done.
And it's perfect, because that's when we sort of like bumped into each other. That's literally what I was going to ask you about. I was like, oh yeah, let's talk about Valance now as like as the antagonist. But it worked out so well, because you're right. So our biggest thread is the one we want to close last. But in the first book, we need to have usually some hint of it somewhere. We need to know that it's out there. And I think my guess would be, as you get further in the story, as the stakes escalate, that force of antagonism is coming closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. But in book 1, they're still out there. We see their power. We know that they're out there. And you're right. I think, one of the ways that KF Breene did this really nicely, so that we understand, like, I'm pretty sure Valance is like our biggest problem. Like, it's gonna, we can just feel it. And so much of that is connected to the little bits and pieces we learn about him because of how Kieran is trying to solve his problem, right? And so she does a really nice job of, like, we are introducing Lexi to this world and to this problem, and because of that little bit we get from Kieran's perspective, and because of those moments when they overlap, and particularly when we get to the end as well, right, when we sort of have the like, all right, we're gonna have to work together, it gives us the sense, it only increases that sense that Valence is kind of omnipresent and that we're doing something under the radar, and that is escalating those sort of inherent stakes to it. Because anytime you can be doing something risky, but then that risk goes double when you're trying to do something risky and not get caught by someone, right? Yeah. And so it really, like, she does a nice job of, because of Kieran's circumstances, using, again, this is sort of going back to plot, but using that plot and using what brings them together to help us get that little hint of what's going to be the overarching problem that we are going to have to deal with in the story.
And I like how he, even though he's not on the page, he sort of defines critical aspects of both of them, right? Like, you kind of think that Kieran, he's a demigod because he's the son of one, and nothing is out of your reach. You can do whatever you want to do, but it's not so, right? It's another level to that. And for Lexi, part of the hardship that they are experiencing is because of the nature in which he rules over, I don't want to call it a kingdom because they're saying it's San Francisco, but this world. I don't know how to say it, right? And so it's if you will, he's a distant enemy to her in general, right? But them coming together heightens that. And even in the way in which she seeks to remedy the issue that they're addressing in the story, y'all, just to not spill any beans or whatever, that heightens her exposure to that threat. And so all the while, again, beautiful, because it's not plot but characters, but even with the characters, escalation. Pacing that escalation. All the while, like, you really don't realize that that's what you're experiencing, but it is, you know? And I would say my last point on this is, like, this is a great story if you have someone that's not on the page, right? But you need to have their presence on, because you don't want them popping up out of nowhere. Right? You miss a really great opportunity. And so having someone that's not on the page, but that we know is a constant threat. And then I'm sure Breene knows this is the one. This is the one that's going to be the showdown moment. But for now, we got to sort of lay the foundation. And so,
and I want to highlight, I love that, because from the beginning of the story, like, even though, like, to our knowledge, Valence doesn't really know Lexi exists. He doesn't care about her. Like, she's not anything to him. But because he's the one in charge, and because of the way that he rules San Francisco, she is, from the beginning of the story, affected by him. And so when she gets involved with Kieran, it brings her one step closer to him, right? And so we're getting even that little bit of escalation of, we get closer and closer to that main force of antagonism through the story, but having him from the beginning, that, like, because of the way that he rules his domain, this is the result of, like, the life that she's having to live. So that makes it easy when we get to, say, you know, midpoint, and we get to like later into the story, to pull him in as, like, oh yeah, he's like the force of antagonism. And to your point, he doesn't come out of nowhere, and it works really, really nicely to set that up early. Were there any other notes that you wanted to hit? Did you have any more you wanted to say about, you know, Happy for Now, or even, like, the progression of the relationship and over 6 books? Anything else you wanted to kind of touch on before we wrap for the day?
I would say, since we're about to wrap, this is a Happy for Now, and I think it's a great story to look at for that if you struggle with Happily Ever After or Happy for Now. For Dana, other people do whatever they want to do. For Dana and Danger Tales, I draw the line between a love story and a romance based upon the ending, right? It's really about the promise. And this does deliver on that Happy for Now, that both of them are happy with where they are, even if in some parts of them may want more. And that wanting more is the thing that we explore as we move forward,
Yeah.
right? That connection and that attraction is very much intact, even if they are fighting it. And so this is a happy for now. It does a great job of establishing the first act of a story in general. So looking at the overarching arc, like it lands it very well that they are sort of stuck together, that they are here together, and that they really both have made this decision in coming together that they can't turn back from. It is a true turning point in their relationship in the story. And so we see that. And we also have this sense of balance being sort of still that sort of larger than life aspect a little bit. But it will get closer and closer as we get to those other books. And as we move into those other books, we even see the way that Kieran has to begin to protect Alexis in other ways. Because if it was known what he recognizes in her, that would put her in even more danger. So I think starting off this story with them having this sense of attraction and this sort of, he felt like the jerk, she felt like an airhead to him. Like, why would you try to protect a phone? And this is his rich kid, like rich people problems kind of situation. Yeah. And then until he really kind of zeroes in and they both feel something, not knowing what it is. And I think having it being super strong, almost to the scale of being uncontrollable, is what holds us on the hook.
Yeah.
It helps us to say, we are okay, KF Breene. I don't know your name. It may be Kathy. It may be Kieran. I don't know. KF Breene, what you're going to do. Like, we're on the hook and we are here for the ride. The final part of this, I think when you have that slow burn, I think that it's almost as if the stakes go up as that sort of romance is slowly plodding along. And it's almost as if they're like yin to the yang, but we need there to always be those touch points that we don't lose track of that thread. Again, because that romance is first. So we don't lose that attraction. We don't lose, they just don't act upon it yet.
Yeah.
And we see the pure restraint, right, that Kieran is having to call upon to not. We need that, right? So if you want to do that slow burn, it's not slow burn as if nothing's happening or they're going to take forever to touch hands or take forever to, right? It's not this. It's not. I think slow burn sometimes that people feel like we're just going to stretch it. Okay, no. That's not, like, in some ways you are stretching it, but what you're doing is sort of adding more beats and more moments that are just slowly causing this thing to go from like a little bit of a boil to a little bit of a simmer to and I think to do it well, take some time to think about that. Yeah. Like, what are those moments when they least expected, when they desire it the least and they want to stay away from it? Do they feel the full force of something that is really out of their control? Yeah. They're trying to control it, but it's out of their control. And the other part is, if you want us to stay the course for that slow burn, especially for this long of a series, like, you have to have some sort of really satisfying payoffs in that department. So when they kiss, y'all, it's got to be out of sight. Like, it's got to be, listen. And, and all of the things, like, there's got to be some very almost like emotional, intimate payoffs as we move forward, so that it almost just is building the anticipation that a reader would have for when it does happen. Yeah. And absolutely. So it's done well. There are so many things that are outstanding. There are so many reasons why they shouldn't, and they are really trying to adhere by them. And that just makes it even more tempting. Yeah. And it's this great balance, because once you strip down all the things that we've talked about in the plot, and we talked about, as we talked about the characters, and you just have man and woman, that there is so much there that if they didn't have all that, maybe they would just go roll around for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? but it's too much at stake. But that's almost what makes it that much more tempting.
Yeah.
And so I think having us on, because the way that I explained this to you earlier is like everything around them, and even they are to themselves and to the other person saying no, but their nature is saying yes. Mm-hmm. It's almost like hormonal teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And so, and so the fact that at the end of this, it leaves them connected in a way that they cannot break that up, and it's a moment that sort of makes it so that it's almost irreversible. Mm-hmm. It means that they're gonna have to handle that.
Yeah.
And that's what we are here for.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna have to do something about that, and they're gonna have to address that. And again, another one of those things that put us on the hook. So yeah.
Perfect. Y'all, I hope you were taking notes, because that was your mini slow burn masterclass right there. I love that. That's so good of just, slow burn doesn't mean they're not on the page together and it's just they won't meet, it means that you're spending more time building that tension. And it also means that you're going to have those moments of delivering on it. Again, especially for this, because we have multiple books. And so we need somewhere to go, but that doesn't mean that just nothing can happen either, right? And so it's really, this book really amazed me, because that's not easy to do, to deliver on some of that heat and make some of those connections, but not all of them, because we have 5 more books where it needs somewhere to go. And that's really, she did it really, really well. So I'm looking forward to reading the second book at some point in the future. I'm sure it will feature on the podcast, maybe even sometime in 2026.
Come on.
As we are planning out our calendar for 2026. Look at us being a few months ahead of 2026. Get the thing planned out. So we will go ahead and wrap it here. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending part of your day with us and joining us for this discussion of the characters in K.F. Breene's Sin and Chocolate. Don't forget to leave us a review, subscribe, so you always know when new episodes are coming out. And again, if you have questions, leave us a comment. You can also email us at storydeepdive@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit us at storydeepdive.com. And those are, I think, all the things that you can do to interact and follow. And, if you have writer friends, don't forget to share this with your writer friends. Start a book club with your writer friends with the books that were, that's the easiest. Now you just have a whole book club, your year of book club done for you. So share this with a writer friend, and we will be back next week for our takeaways to wrap up Sin and Chocolate. But until then, we will see you next time. Happy writing.